Hi everybody, it's Matt the Dice Chucker from the Literary Gamers coming to you with a book review. Today I actually don't have the book in my possession because it needed to get back to the library. It was on hold for another person. But today I'm going to talk about probably my first overly negative review. Now, I'm not a fan of doing negative reviews because, well, I just feel like, first off, as an author myself, I would feel bad if someone went onto one of my book's profiles and gave it 1 star because they genuinely didn't like the product that I delivered. It makes me feel like... And let me just clarify, it's not that I'm angry at the reviewer for giving me a 1-star review. That's not the case. For me, it would be, I just feel bad that they took time out of their day to read a book that they, in the end, found wanting and so bad that they would give it 1 star. So that's why I don't often do negative reviews on books, because there's a lot of work that goes into these things. Writing a story, getting your characters fleshed out. It's not something that just happens. You know, there's a lot of thought and world building that goes behind it. But today, the book I want to talk about is a book that I think struggled with a lot of issues, and I'm going to see how well I do with my video editing skills. So today's book is Light of the Jedi. This is the first book in the High Republic series for Star Wars, and a few things about my history with Star Wars. I first saw the films when I was, I think, 8-9 years old, and then got a chance to see them in the theaters when they released the special edition, and then was around my teens when the prequels started to come out. So I've been with Star Wars for a long time. I read a number of the books. I read a lot of the Dark Horse comic books, especially the Tales of the Jedi series way back in the day. I had a chance to play a lot of the video games as a kid. And I still do. And we play some of the board games. I'm staring at the new Clone Wars board game over there, waiting for me to crack it open. But when Disney acquired Star Wars, they erased a lot of the old legend material, and that's what they're calling it now. You can still buy it, but it's not canon anymore. And when they announced the High Republic, I was excited because a lot of the Star Wars in this day and age is about making these grand connections between the different IPs. You know, for example, we just recently had the Book of Boba Fett, and halfway through the season, we're introduced to the Mandalorian. I didn't expect to see the Mandalorian in the Book of Boba Fett, but there he was. And then we had Luke Skywalker, we had Ahsoka. So there's a lot of practice that's going into play where it's pretty much saying we need to use this to make a connection. And if we can't do that for the audience, they're going to tune out. When they announced the High Republic, I was excited because it shouldn't have any connection to any other characters in the Skywalker saga or any of the spin-offs that they've got there. So I was eager to learn these new characters and see what they were going to go through. And so that's why I picked up, well, I had Jen pick it up for me, Light of the Jedi. And she even brought 2 of the other books. Now, I wasn't concerned when I saw that all the books were written by different people, but I should have been concerned when I saw they were all written by other people. So the basic gist of the story is that there is a galaxy-wide disaster that happens via the hyperlanes, and Jedi are there to try and not only save the people, get them evacuated before the disaster happens to another planet, and then it's they're trying to figure out what's going on here and how this is going to affect them in the future. So that's the basic gist of what's going on here. We're introduced to the villains, who are called the Nihil. I think that's how you spell, not spell, of course you spell it that way, how you pronounce it. And They're trying to supersede the hyperspace lanes. They're creating their own lanes. And a lot of this on paper sounds really interesting. I like the idea of the hyperspace lane dialogue and all people trying to break the system by having new hyperspace lanes. And the creation, I actually liked the villains for a bit. The problem that I found with the book was, well, I'm going to break this up. Let's talk about the beginning and the disaster that happens with the hyperspace travel. I like that concept. Something bad. It's a great way to introduce stuff. But the author here is spending a great deal of time introducing us to characters, giving us some backstory, and then by the time the chapter's done, that character is dead. There is, at least when I see it, no reason to introduce us to characters that are just going to die by the end of the next page. The only time I've ever done that was because the character had a connection to the plot of one of my other characters rising the ranks. Yeah, I've got my elastic here because I see a cat over there who likes to eat elastics. So yeah, in one of my stories, we have a captain of the guard. She's trying to rise through the ranks, and she is finding a way to use somebody for her own gain. And by the end of the chapter that character is introduced, they are killed, and it's because it's a plot device. Granted, the plot of the story is that there is a disaster that happens, but I think I would have connected with some of these characters that got killed off more if they had stronger connections to the main cast that we're introduced to. Now let's talk about the main cast. I cannot, for the life of me, remember any of their names, and every time they popped up in the story, I had to read back and find out who they are. One of the benefits of having a character name like Luke Skywalker or Rey is it's easy to remember. Okay, Luke because it has that real world connection. This before we get some of the odd names introduced to us, and then Rey because it's really simple name to remember. Suddenly, we're introduced to characters that have, and not to say that they have odd names. The names themselves are fine, but I cannot remember them because they all seem to have the same type of name, you know? And when I first read Lord of the Rings years ago, I was confused the first read-through between Sauron and Saruman. I'm like, wait, I can't remember what's going on here. And then you had Mordor and Moria. And when I was reading the first book, I had no idea of this world. I hadn't read The Hobbit. And then we get to Moria in the story of Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm like, okay, here's where they have to drop the ring. Oh, wait, no, Mordor is where they have to drop the ring. Moria, they're just traveling through the mountains. So when you have a lot of characters that are similarly named, I can't remember them. Okay? And so, I mean, I can't even tell you one of their names now. So I couldn't connect with them. And that falls to me as a reader as you could have done more character development and made these characters more more memorable. Okay, so I couldn't really connect with any of the characters. And then let's talk about the villains. The villains are interesting. They're trying to break the system. They have a really neat way of the societal ladder, and you get to see them in action. They are fairly imposing. It's not one of those situations where the villain's kind of like, they're interesting, but what they're trying to accomplish is meh. It's kind of like in Pillars of Creation with the Sword of Truth, which we finished up last week. Emperor Zhigong is supposed to be this grand leader, and he's almost destroyed in one of the situations there by something really simple. Now, I'm not sure if that's good kind telling us that that's old world mentality versus new world mentality, but it just seemed a little odd to me that we've been told so many times about the grandeur of this villain, and then when it comes time to see it, meh. Anyway, so the villains are interesting, but I also felt like there could have been more. There were some other connections with someone in the Senate. I think it's the Senate, and then you have overall after the disaster is done, We then are kind of cleaning up the pieces and trying to figure it out. Now, when they figure out what's going on, and they have to find out how to track it, and there's a character who connects, I think, 1,000 astromechs, and he said there's a very slim chance that this is going to work because they don't have the technology yet. Well, guess what? It worked. Isn't that nice and easy? I mean, yes, there was some troubles getting it happening, but it's also, at that point, it's like, when I'm reading your story, and I'm trying to gain some sort of tension from what you're writing, and my goodness, I just realized now that this isn't really center. I'm sorry if I've been looking like this the whole time. So, overcoming adversity is a huge thing for character development. It's a huge thing for plot. And I just felt like every time they set out to do something, within 20 pages or within a handful of chapters, it was accomplished. Here's the thing. The whole book felt like it was written not by a single author. There's a single author's name on the cover of it. But the whole book really felt like it was just a hodgepodge of ideas thrown at one author and said, all of these need to get in. Okay? It felt like a committee-written book. There was also some oddness I felt when it came to the characters and how they were portrayed and how they would find moments of time to celebrate. There's this scene where an apprentice is in a fighter, and he's able to, I believe it's a fighter, able to shoot down one of the enemy forces. And, just like we've seen in many of the other films, even like Revenge of the Sith with the opening scene over Coruscant, when somebody takes down a fighter that they've been, going after, they often celebrate, Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, when he finally shot down the TIE Fighter, and you had Anakin at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, like I said. And then over the intercom, the Jedi Master says, remember, it is not a moment here to celebrate, or something along those lines. You're here to do a job. And it's like, kick them while they're down for what reason? I mean, I felt that it was not really, and I'm not even sure what the word is. I didn't connect with that. I thought that it was just like, someone accomplished something in battle, and you're telling them not to take any pride in that. And even when there's accomplishments made overall, it's the Jedi way not to be taking compliments, I guess. But it also seems like the committee writing style that I felt heavily in this book. They had their ideas and they gave them to Charles Soule, and he tried to create a plot around it, and the plot really, for me, did not work. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there who really love the High Republic stuff, and if that's the case, I'm so happy that you can enjoy these books. I'm not one of them, and that's okay. I tried reading into the second one, and I just couldn't get into it, and I put it down. I think I'm just going to skip over this series. I'm not going to say it's not for me, because I really wanted it for it to be for me. The other thing that I didn't really care for, and thankfully he never made an appearance, is Yoda is mentioned a few times, and I'm like, you don't need to do that. You don't always need to give me somebody to have it connect back to what I've seen before. So I just didn't enjoy it. I'm really sorry. I feel terrible. I hate doing these types of reviews because, like I said, I know that there is a person behind this who spent a great deal of time and energy creating and world building, and for someone to turn around and say I don't like it is really. I'm sure that for me, when I don't really promote my books well, because I think I live in fear of the first 1 star. So I feel like I've let people down, and yeah, I gave up with the old High Republic series. Now, I'll say it again. this is just my opinion. This is not something that's spread all over, and I think I really can stand behind the statement, it's not for me. Now, some people are going to say, Matt, as a reviewer, you are obligated to let the public know when there's a bad product out there. But what works for me doesn't work for you, and what works for you doesn't work for me. So I can say that I didn't care for it, and it's not for me. But if you like some of the stuff that I talked about with the whole disaster-based idea, you have people superseding hyperspace lanes, you have an interesting set of villains, go for it. Take a read. I mean, it doesn't take too long to read, but it took me much too long to read. So, for example, I started, I think, in March, and I finished in July. And it's a 400-page book with a decent amount of spacing on the text. It should not have taken me that long. So, it's not for me, and that's okay. All right? I really wanted to like it, but it's just not for me. And I think it's for people, because when you go onto Goodreads and you see people's reactions to it, there are people out there who really like it. Fantastic. But that's going to be all for today. Next week, I'm going to start covering... Oh, what did I pick? I think I'm going to be covering The Reckoners, is what I chose. The Brandon Sanderson series about superheroes. So, we'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can be kept up with our content. We are going to try to be much more regular with the content, playthroughs, what's in there. We've got reviews coming up. And, yeah. See you next time, everybody. Goodbye.